Howard here at 82 Maple for part two of something called Pump Purgatory or whatever. So how in the world did I get myself in this spot? I'm sitting here on a Wednesday evening, snuggled up to a sewer lift pump. Isn't that what you want to do with your Wednesday evening? Stay tuned to find out how I got here and what I'm going to do about it. Hey, Howard here at 82 Maple. This little channel started out as something to share out the experiences of what was then my brand new little Norwood HD36 sawmill. But like a bad weed, it expanded to include a range of ancillary equipment and tools, like my two little Stihl electric chainsaws, like my 20-year-old mini excavator, like, wow, a manure spreader? I never thought I'd own one of these when I started the channel. And some of these have brought great joy. Some of them have brought a lot of frustration, along with great joy. So here we are. And perhaps to justify this expanding array of tools and equipment, Coral and I decided a little more than a year ago to take on a pretty significant rural property rehab project. Or maybe it was because of the rural rehab project that we expanded the tools and equipment. Who knows? What came first, the chicken or the egg? But you know what? If this property was a tractor, we'd have jacked up the battery and pulled a new tractor under it a long time ago. So, if you want front row seats to a series of what in Lemony Snicket terms would be termed a series of unfortunate adventures, something like that, stay tuned. Right now on this channel, you have front row seats to watching Coral and I dig holes, fall into them, tunnel our way out of it, and figure it out. This particular video, and the one just preceding it, the one about the shallow well pump that didn't work, well, there's at least one of those events included in pretty much any typical week for us over the course of the past year. But don't get me wrong, we'd not have traded the experience for anything, which means that Coral and I are at least as excited as you are to see what comes next. Around here, we just kind of make things up. I love this drywall blade, and it actually cuts all sorts of stuff. Hey, Howard here at 82 Maple, and what am I doing standing out in the middle of the field, getting ready to talk about a sewage lift pump? Well, I like this location better. Let's just put it that way. We're at the end of 4 days of inconvenience and frustration. Also 4 days of deep learning that I'm sharing out for one reason. Well, two actually. One, so that you can perhaps avoid the same fate as me. And number two, to elicit your comments and suggestions on what I could have done more, better, and different. So this little adventure started a year ago. When we first occupied this property, one of the first things Coral and I did is we went around and made an inventory of the age of various equipment. We got some input and had a little conversation with the prior owner about the age of various things and got a bit of a sense of that. The pump in the barn, and there's a separate well down at the barn, it failed within a month or so of us getting here and had to replace that, and maybe that's what triggered some of those conversations. Well, as it turns out, in the second residence on this property, while there's a really nice flat spot out in front of the daylight basement where one would typically locate a septic field, that wasn't possible because of the proximity of a protected creek quite close by. So there was no option for the builder of that house other than a septic sump and lift pump to the other side of the house. Well, we took a look at that lift pump, talked to the owner, hadn't been replaced in who knows how long. Furthermore, we discovered that that basement had been flooded twice with stuff that you don't want in your basement. And I'm throwing in some photos here of drywall replacement. There was mold, all sorts of nastiness down there. We ripped up and replaced flooring, drywall, all of that stuff. So that's a quick and dirty background, and there was no way I was going to subject myself to that. And so had a little chat with a plumber that was doing a lot of work for us, and talked to him about replacing the pump. He tried to talk me out of it, saying, when the pump fails, I'll be here in half a day. Hold that thought. We can replace it. There'll be minor inconvenience. Why fix something that isn't broken, etc.? I prevailed because my idea of fun is not dealing with an unexpected sewer pump failure. So the new pump went in, $1,500 later. Hey, we're fixed for the next 5 years or so, right? Let's fast forward 6 months or something like that to this past Sunday morning. We hear from our tenant that the alarm has gone off. I come down, check things out. The pump has failed. We're on the brink of an overflow. The pump is still, it seems, somewhat workable. I play around with it. I turn it on, I turn it off. I play with the valve a little bit. And slowly, ever so slowly, it manages to take the level down a bit. Clearly, it wasn't working. And at that point, you know what? I don't always bring my A game first thing Sunday morning, but even I could figure out that Sunday was not going to be a day at the beach for me. We try by voicemail, email, text to get a hold of our plumber, and guess what? No response. So I prevail on a neighbor who is also a plumber. He has empathy for my plight, comes over, and we pull the pump. Messy job. We try and strategize where to next. We decide that we're going to have to send the pump in for a diagnosis. Coral takes the pump in. Now we're at Monday morning, and takes it in for a diagnosis. Later on Monday, we learn from the qualified repair shop that the pump is irreparable. The official diagnosis is ground fault. Let me back up. The pump was plugged into a regular outlet, not one with the GFC protection. And so talk to our plumber again, not the one that had done the original installation. And he says, well, we got to get that tank cleaned out. So I make a couple of calls. First call, a guy says he'll come up for $450 and clean that little holding tank out. Second call, $200, and he'll come up and clean the holding tank out. Guess who got the job? But that wasn't the biggest issue. I was grateful that a very alert pump operator was able to articulate to me that there was a whole bunch of things that had gone into the toilet that shouldn't ever have gone into the toilet. I'll leave the rest to your imagination. So I relay this along with the news that the pump is irreparable. I relay all of that along to our plumber, and he said, Howard, I've got a solution for you. And in brief, what he described was a grinder pump. Cost about 50% more than the original pump. Boy, if I'd known that, I would have put that pump in. And so we go to work. The grinder pump goes in. There was some plumbing that needed to be redone. Learning from my little episode up at the water well that you may have viewed. If not, I'll throw a link in down below. I had an electrician not only on standby to load test the pump, but we put in a proper ground fault connection, so that would never be the diagnosis again. We hook things up, we test it, it runs well. Hey, I'm feeling pretty good, but we're still a ways from the end of this project. So, just want to share out a couple of observations as I summarize. So, 3 things really. I do reach out, and we finally connect on day 3 with the plumber that did the initial installation. And he said, you know what, Howard, that ground fault thing, you know what, I've plugged pumps in a lot. Where there's no ground fault connection, never been a problem. And on the reliability issue, yeah, Howard, they probably don't run forever. But you know what? You probably need to replace them every couple or 3 years. And yeah, Howard, I knew you had tenants in and thought that pump would do the trick because I kind of queried, like, for $500 more, why wouldn't I put that pump in? Yeah, probably should have put that pump in, but no solution is perfect. And in fact, you know what? He's right. There isn't a perfect solution. I've done some research on YouTube. You can do it too, on grinder pumps, and they have their own quirks and foibles. So, having addressed the electrical and mechanical issues to the best of my ability, with everything up and running as it should be, I now get to focus on creating a cover for the sump pump area, because the new pump has a different location for the vent and the outflow hoses than the old pump did. So, what to use for material and where can I find that? I really like to repurpose and reuse, and I prefer not to be driving in and out of town trying to source something. So, got an interesting little story here. A couple months ago, Coral and I took delivery of an ATV that we had ordered a year ago. At the time I did the order, the sales representative said, "So, Howard, are you going to want skid plates on your ATV?" Yes, I am. Okay, that's a $600 or $700 option. We added skid plates. I dug deep into the bank account for the required funds, and away we went. Took delivery of the ATV here, like I said, a couple of months back, and I'm looking in the back of the ATV as I'm doing the load, and I say, what's this? There's a couple of pieces of fairly robust, 1/4-inch thick material made out of what appears to be a very durable plastic, polyurethane something. And they said, oh, those are the factory skid plates. We thought you wanted the metal skid plates. There had been no further discussion, but hey, there we go. Let's make lemonade out of lemons. Therein lay the material for creating a 24-inch round pump cover. So we went to work with the tools, and I'm going to put a little clip in here about that just as we wrap up this episode. You may want to think about whether rehabbing an old rural property is worth the price. Hey, Coral's on the camera today. She and I would both nod. Yeah, it has its moments, but she's captured a couple of, a little bit of footage here of her minis, and they're a real treat to her and to the grandkids. We've got plenty of those, and you know what? So now let's jump into a bit of footage on how you too might repurpose a genuine, original Honda skid plate for fun and profit. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, from left hand to right, just finished with the oscillating saw. Now we gotta just clean it up.
Here we go.
Time to adjust the clamps, and there you have it. A drywall blade on an oscillating saw cutting through what was formerly a Honda ATV skid plate. Around here, we just kind of make things up. I love this drywall blade, and it actually cuts all sorts of stuff. That's what you got to do on a rural property. so nobody's ever actually going to see it or inspect it. But that's not the point. When I go to sleep at night, I want to know I brought my A game. My A game might be like somebody else's C+ game, but I just gotta bring my A game. Yeah, it's a sewer pump cover. Hey, Howard here at 82 Maple. And this is the very first video in a series that you're going to see clips of over the next 3 years. The series is going to be called The Forest Project. Here's what's happening. We've owned a lot of properties over the years, but we've never named a tree. And the tree you see behind me here, we've just named Forest. Here's what's different. This tree has to come down for a variety of reasons, and the fallers are going to arrive in a few hours. But what makes this tree special is I'm going to expend every effort possible to utilize as much of this tree as I can, from the needles, to the branches, to the bark, to the sawdust. Hey, if you have any tips, tools, techniques, suggestions, ideas that you think would be useful to me as we go through this journey over the course of the next couple or 3 years, please drop me a line in the comments section below. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. It helps me a ton. And most of all, I just so appreciate your entries in the comments section. I love hearing from the community of folks that use wood products, portable sawmills, chainsaws, and everything that goes along with that. Talk soon.